Our next speaker, when I asked him how he'd like to be introduced, he said, well, don't tell too much because my presentation is really my bio. So I can't tell you much, but you probably have heard of Kosta. You've probably seen him on the cover of some magazines. If you've ever heard of the word inventor, that was probably said about him. If you've ever heard the word entrepreneur, that was probably said about him. Kosta is a mad genius, I would say, in the nicest way. But when I asked him about his presentation, he said, you know, writing this has been a real journey of reflection because I'm about to tell a story that, having talked to my mom about it, you know, we cried. Oh, did I just share that? Oh. Well, I think it was a beautiful thing that Kosta is coming with the spirit of Nexus to share a very personal story with us, and I hope that you'll welcome him with open arms.
So many friends out here. It's quite beautiful. It's great to be back at Nexus this year. It's great to see you, the new faces. This segment is called Writing Your Own Story, and I'm like, all right, I'll tell my story. And usually I tell a story of being special. This story hasn't been shared publicly. For all intents and purposes, I'm a shiny person with a fancy resume. I'm an on-air correspondent for Al Jazeera for a show that is viewed in over 150 countries. I'm a non-profiteer whose work has been profiled everywhere, from Time magazine to Vogue. I'm a rocket scientist at SpaceX who's built technology that's in space. I'm the inventor of a cybernetic eye. I was not bred to be exceptional. I was raised to find my own happiness. Humbly, I would like to share with you my story, the story of becoming the person that I've always wanted to be. In 1985, I was born in the bathtub of a tiny Southern California apartment. My mother, the wise woman that she was, cradled me in her arms and whispered these first words: "You can do anything you put your mind to." I could probably end the story right here, and it would all make sense. Mother tells child, dare to dream, and she gets results. But that's not exactly accurate. After a quiet moment, I decided I was going to put my mind to crying, and for the next 6 months straight, I screamed. In fact, I was such a prolific wailer that my mom had her tubes tied. Because, to quote Dad, we need sleep or we're getting a divorce. We don't need another child. I had a beautiful childhood, raised by two parents who knew how to love unconditionally, which was important. Because when I was 4, when someone thought it would be a great idea to give me my first do-it-yourself toolkit, no one could have predicted I would become a menace with a screwdriver. The living room TV, the answering machine, the toaster, every mechanical or electronic object in my household was subject to disassembly to appease my curiosity. My dad, a musician by trade, taught me the science basics, but preemptively he started bringing home damaged computer equipment from his work, fearing that our own home computer and printer would fall victim to my desire to dismantle. At some point, something clicked, and I figured out that building things was a lot more fun. But the things I was building weren't always as innocuous as airplanes. There was the flaming jet engine that screamed in my backyard, the microwave experiment that brought the fire department, my year-long conquest to liquefy ammonia, the homebrew motorized skateboard whose self-destruction brought in the insurance adjusters. I don't have pictures of these because my mom wasn't around. You would think that so much inquiry would translate into some sort of academic excellence. For me, that wasn't the case. In fact, I was a terrible student. The philosophy at the schools I attended was sit down, shut up, listen. But prior to that point, learning for me had always been about doing, break things, take chances, fail, just to see what happens. But school wasn't about that. School actively discouraged failure. Your objective is to get the right answer every time or else. I failed fast and hard. My parents, who wanted me to be successful just like any other parent, didn't know what to do. They took me to the family doctor, who administered some tests, and this is what they learned. I was smart, like 97th percentile smart, and smart kids should inherently be doing well in school. But because I wasn't, there must be something wrong with me, and I needed to be fixed. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD, and the accompanying prescriptions were just starting to become in vogue in the 90s. So that's what I got. An orange pill called Dexedrine that altered my brain chemistry so I could thrive in the academic institution. I was 11 years old, and I had been fixed. Except not really. Dexedrine and similar medications like Ritalin are amphetamines. Crystal meth is one of the more infamous variants. At 11 years old, I was tweaking out on a particularly large dose of a drug that was kind of like that. It kept me up all night, it gave me a nervous twitch, but it got me passing grades. The doctors, though, they had solutions to these problems. Not sleeping? Take Klonopin. Your twitchiness has escalated into full-blown panic attacks? Have some Paxil. Feeling out of control and depressed? Have a mood stabilizer or 2 or 4. I was told that I would need to be on medication for the rest of my life if I was to be a productive member of society. By the end of high school, I was taking 16 pills a day, getting decent grades, and falling asleep everywhere because Thorazine, whose side effects includes zombification, is a hell of a drug to give a 15-year-old. Feeling overwhelmed, I started treating myself pretty terribly. The emergency room visits were frequent, enough so that my family was on a first-name basis with the staff. I was homeschooled for my final semester, and somehow I graduated. My parents wanted me to go to college. They'd saved all that money. I was content lying in bed and not moving. I'd had enough of school. A new campus was opening up near our home, and my parents somehow pried me out of my misery to take a tour. And I kid you not, this was the first line out of our tour guide's mouth. This campus used to be California's largest mental institution. Closed in 1977, the buildings are now the home to this university. Irony is not lost on me. And because I wasn't getting into Caltech anytime soon, I enrolled with this caveat. No drugs, no psychiatrist. I would succeed in my school on my own, or I would drop out and live a happy life flipping burgers. Perhaps there was some healing force from the aura of all the crazy people who inhabited the place before me. Perhaps it was the lead paint. But in my first year, something started to stir. I was reading Camus and Sartre, and it occurred to me that perhaps it wasn't I that was broken. Perhaps the system was broken. Maybe I did... Maybe I did have what it took to be successful, but the institution wasn't working in my interests. I quickly became a militant student who was determined to take charge of my own education. I waltzed into classrooms to propose my own syllabi. If a teacher protested, I reminded them that I was in fact paying for this education and I had objectives. With the help of a cadre of professors who believed in me, I was granted $14,000 to design and build a research project that would change the way we study our air. I had money, the internet to teach me what I needed to know, an internship at a machine shop, and much to my roommate's dissatisfaction, I quietly turned my dorm into a laboratory. That's all I needed. 2 years later, and the project took first place in engineering at the statewide undergraduate research competition. And my school didn't even have an engineering major. You guys are making me feel great. Thank you. I've never told this story. No longer could anyone tell me who or what I should be, and after proving myself in college, I had new objectives. Balloons were cool, but rockets are cooler. I wanted to be a rocket scientist. So I pounded SpaceX, Elon Musk's rocket company, with emails for months, and ultimately landed a job and a chance to design a satellite that's now in space. Traveling sounded so romantic, but at the time, flying alone was the absolute scariest thing on the planet, and I was not going anywhere. So I enrolled in pilot lessons. MIT sounded like a great place to play with ideas, so I battled their rejections for 2 years, then found myself a visiting scientist in their media labs, working on vision testing systems for the developing world. I read about a one-eyed filmmaker living in Toronto who wanted to shoot video from the perspective of his missing eye, so I moved in with the guy and built it. I wrote him an email and said, "I'll build that for you." And we got to go all over the world and talk about it. It was amazing. And how did I learn these things? No one taught me. No formal education necessary. I learned everything I ever wanted to know from the internet. And I am grateful. And I needed to express that gratitude. Now it's time to tell you someone else's story. The story of someone whose work impacted me greatly. His name is William Kamkwamba. Raised in Malawi, Africa, William, unlike me, couldn't afford to go to school. So he did the next best thing. He went to the library. Using the concepts he learned in old engineering books, he built something fantastic. Using only scrap materials and junkyard parts, he reinvented the windmill to power a small light in his hut so he could read at night. Some roving journalist found this young man, fell in love with his handcrafted, environmentally friendly energy source, and wrote a book about his innovation. At the time that this book was published, I was living in a really weird innovation think tank in Berlin called Palomar 5. Deutsche Telekom had literally given these German kids 2 million euros to essentially play. They rented out an abandoned beer factory, retrofitted it with bunk beds and a kitchen, and brought in some smart young kids with the instructions, build something, have fun. We came from all walks of life. Engineers, government writers, artists, and my favorite, non-profiteers. You see, intrinsically, I had learned that people were suffering all over the world. I didn't know how to do anything about it, but the desire to be of service to others was pushing me towards something. And then I heard about William Kamkwamba. I was absorbing an American TV show late in my Palomar 5 hut, and William came on to talk about his book and his windmill. The journalist, John Stewart, asked him if we can call him a journalist, asked him if he had ever heard of Google. And William responded matter-of-factly, "What animal is a Google?" So they showed him Google, and he typed in windmill, and his response was profound. Where was Google this whole time? My jaw was on the ground. Here was a kid on another continent who couldn't even afford to go to school, who's smart as hell and is literally reinventing the wheel because no one has told him any better. Ladies and gentlemen, the Library of Alexandria is at our fingertips, and 5 billion people on this planet don't have access. I did a quick Google of my own, and I learned something staggering. 2 out of 3 people can't get online. That's insane. Knowledge, democracy, freedom of expression, everything that makes our society function on a global scale is powered by the internet. And so that was it. I declared matter-of-factly that access to the internet should be a basic human right. I started a nonprofit organization called A Human Right. And our goal was to ensure that every person had access to the internet. Because access is a tool that helps people to help themselves. If anyone knew that intrinsically, it was me. And other people agreed. Sugatra Mitra, TED Fellow, TED Prize winner, once said, you can multiply the effectiveness of 10 teachers by 100 or 1,000-fold if you give children access to the internet. A 10% increase in internet penetration equals a 3% increase in GDP. It enables everything. And we've worked really hard as an organization. Before Kickstarter was really a thing, we attempted to crowdfund the purchase of a bankrupt satellite to move over the Middle East during the Arab Spring. We didn't end up raising the billions of dollars to acquire the satellite, but we educated a lot of people about the persistent digital divide. We started another campaign, Move This Cable, where we changed the planned route of the South Atlantic Express cable to connect one of the most remote islands in the world. And we got it. They moved the cable. We launched a documentary on why internet matters called Web. It took home awards at film festivals, and we fundraised furiously to do much bigger things, like building a food bank for the internet called the Bandwidth Bank, by redistributing all the unused bandwidth in the world. And here's a little secret for you guys. There's tons of it. Tons of unused bandwidth sitting in space on satellites, sitting on cellular networks terrestrially, and sitting in transatlantic and transpacific cables. Just sitting, waiting for someone to do something with it. But fundraising for these ideas wasn't something I was particularly great at. Perhaps I should have told my story sooner. About a year ago, feeling frustrated, it occurred to me that telecommunications is a $1 trillion industry. And perhaps it would be easier to build new business models to tackle these challenges instead of nonprofit endeavors. And for the last year, I've been working on that. Meet all of us. All of us. You got it. So does Mark. I didn't come up with a name. It's a benefit corporation that will cover America in free internet and allow our customers to extend that coverage to the rest of the world. How does it work? You simply purchase a wireless hotspot from us. We named ours Lark. Every month, you receive a portion of free internet to power all of your devices, enough for the essentials of life, like email. When you run out of the free stuff, you can buy more, and when you do, we keep track of how many gigabytes you've purchased. When we sell enough bandwidth across our network, we launch a connectivity project somewhere in the world to get people online. For our first project, we've secured the world's first satellite-enabled tablet and the right to use 2 satellites with coverage over Africa and Asia. The tablets come with a lifetime supply of free data service. You can just drop them off and they'll work. Except we won't do that. We're building effective programs for impact in all of our impact verticals. I know we've all heard the story of just dropping things off and see what happens. It's not enough, and internet access has to be useful. We've managed to do so much over the last year. We secured a contract with a major telecommunications provider in the United States. We designed a device, shot a Kickstarter video, built a brand, and built partnerships in Dadaab, the world's largest United Nations operated refugee camp, to distribute these tablets. We haven't even launched yet, and already we've been featured in Wired and Time. We raised $250,000, and we're raising another round of capital from impact investors to bring all of us to life. I am thrilled. A few years ago, I went to my doctor's office. I brought some news clippings of my work and described how well things had been going. I asked him if it was possible to be undiagnosed. And together we sat in front of a computer and deleted every diagnosis I had ever been given. My destiny was my own, as it had always been. These experiences have given me great purpose, and I would not trade them for anything. My purpose is to be a good ancestor, to leave this world a little better than how I found it. Nexus members, I believe each of you have a similar mission, but for your own reasons. Our generation is about creating a better world not just for ourselves, but for everyone. Let's do that. Let's plant the trees so our children can rest in the shade. As my mom always told me, you really can do anything you put your mind to. I'm Kosta Grammatis, I'm a Nexus member, and we are Nexus.